feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. You're listening to episode 77 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. I'm so glad to be with you today, now that we have tax day behind us, which in my household will forever be engagement day, because it is the day, yes, that I got engaged many, many years ago, which is now makes this day much more fun than tax day. And I think my husband somehow needed a reframe. He grew up as the son of a CPA. And I think he had had enough of tax day being like this gloom and doom situation and decided to put a positive spin on it by making that the day we got engaged. So I always kind of have a smile to myself on tax day, knowing that we have a positive, very positive memory associated with that day. So for all my accountants out there, congratulations on getting through your busiest season of the year and reclaiming your lives, I hope. I know it really is a challenging time of year, one when you literally work all the time. And I think if we're honest, some of us live like we are an accountant in tax season all year round. So today, that is exactly what we are digging into. We are talking about how to decide when you've done enough for the day. Because look, there are really two kinds of people, right? There are those who can't get started, and there are those who don't know how to stop. And today we are talking to the people who can't stop working, right? The people who just can't sit still. Maybe you're somebody who needs to fold laundry while you're watching TV, or you can't sit down to read that book until everything in the kitchen is spotless, or you can't take a shower until you get that one more email out. You know the type, right? By the way, this is me. So I am speaking from firsthand experience here. And it's exhausting when it's left unchecked, right? We are no fun to be around when we work all the time. So today, we're going to teach you how to decide when it's enough. And I was thinking a little bit about the movie. Some of you may have seen this movie, Christopher Robin, that came out last year. My son really wanted to go see this movie with me. And so we went, just the two of us, which is not something we get to do very often. It was a delightful day. But in this movie, the character of Christopher Robin is now a grown-up. So this is from the Winnie the Pooh series. And Christopher Robin is now a grown-up and he has a daughter of his own. And what you learn very quickly is that he has become a massive workaholic. He has a demanding job, a lot of pressure put on him by his boss. And his belief is that he really needs to work all the time and that all of the things that his family might want to do, his wife and his daughter, are kind of like nonsensical. They just don't matter. And so, of course, the story goes on this wonderful arc of him rediscovering the magic of spending time with his family and having some leisure time. And it's done through his own reconnection with the characters of his childhood, his imaginary friends from his childhood. And so I thought it was a really poignant reminder because as I watched that movie, I'll be honest, I identified more with his character than I did with the mom. And so I think for a lot of women who, have big jobs and like to work and feel deeply connected to their work, that can be a little uncomfortable because it's not necessarily our cultural narrative, right? Women are not the characters in movies, at least, who show up as the one who may be prone to overworking. And so what we're going to talk about today is, again, how do you decide when it's enough, right? When have you done enough and it's time to stop for the day? Because you cannot work 100% of the time. And honestly, you shouldn't. Right. And I know you feel like you have so much to do. And believe me when I tell you, I can relate to that. And, I think I come by it honestly. I can remember watching my mom work all the time. She was a teacher, fully dedicated to her vocation as a teacher. And so she would get up early in the morning and be preparing, and she would work on things in the evening. And it was joyful, right? She wasn't resentful about it, but there was a lot of it. And I remember her saying, she kind of says this to this day, honestly, if I iron while I watch TV, then I won't fall asleep. Right? Well, listen to that, right? If you have to be standing up at an ironing board while you're watching the TV to not fall asleep, it's a pretty good indication that you are clearly tired, right? But, we think if we just keep going, then we'll prevent ourselves from falling asleep. And I remember saying the same thing when my kids, especially when my kids were really tiny, that I knew if I sat down in the evening, I would fall asleep. Right. And so I didn't want to sit down. I was like, I have to keep going until I'm at the point where if I do fall asleep, it'll be okay. This is a pretty giant clue that we're pushing too hard. Okay. So if you struggle with this, we have 2 new goals to set for you today. They are sleep and fun. Call me crazy. Okay. So this is going to start with one important precursor. For you to make some progress here, the first thing that has to happen is you're going to need to map out a plan for when things need to be done in order to stay ahead of your deadlines, right? You're going to want to schedule things so that you know what you'll be doing for the day in advance. And this is a really important piece of the puzzle because think about it. Without that plan, how would you ever decide you were done for the day? There's this never-ending to-do list that all of us are facing. That running to-do list is long. And if you're staring at that without having already decided, what will I do in this day? It can feel like, well, I'll just get one more thing. I'll add one more, I'll do one more. And one more becomes 10 more. And before you know it, right, you have eliminated any opportunity for rest or leisure from your day, and you're probably starting to eat into your sleep. Okay. So what we want to do is have a clear plan in advance for what you intend to do during the day. And then that's going to allow this framework to sort of snap into place, right? It's going to give you freedom as long as you have established that plan. So that's a really important step. If you still haven't gotten into that cycle, you may want to go back and listen to the episode. It's called What Gets Scheduled Gets Done. It was one of the earlier episodes in this podcast. And just search for it because we talk a lot about building that plan and really determining what you're going to do in the day. Okay. So let's assume you have the plan and that you have declared in advance which things would get accomplished. Well, when you're trying to decide if you're done for the day, you want to ask yourself a few questions. The first one, not surprisingly, is, have I done what was on my plan? Okay. So I will caveat this and say, when you're new to the process of building a plan, you will often put too much on it. So you do want to kind of be realistic, right? If you feel like you really were overly ambitious for the day, then even if you have not completed everything that's on your plan, you may in fact be done, right? You may be tapped. So if you have done everything on your plan, you're definitely done, right? Then you definitely have kind of earned your right to say, now it's time for some leisure or to get prepared for rest. Second question you want to ask yourself is, have I met my deadlines? So this is kind of your plan B. If you have not completed everything on the plan, have you at least met your deadlines, right? Do you know what's due the next day, for example? So let's say your son has signed up to do Muffin Monday and you need to bring muffins and it's Sunday. Have you made the muffins, right? They kind of need to be ready if you're going to take them in the next morning. Maybe you have a big meeting happening the next morning. Are you prepared for that meeting, right? Maybe there's no time left in the evening to make dinner. Have you kind of gotten your stuff together so that when you come home the next night, it's going to be super easy to put a meal on the table? You want to always be looking like that one step ahead to just say, what's up the next day? What's due? Am I prepared for that? And as long as you are, truly everything else can wait, right? It can get pushed into the next day without repercussions. So that's an important second question. Have I met my deadlines? And then the third question, which is kind of plan C, is, have I hit diminishing returns? Right? So what do I mean by diminishing returns? Are you slowing down? Are you getting less done per hour? Right? Is your productivity starting to fade because you're tired? Would you be better off stopping to get some sleep or just getting away from your desk for a while, regrouping, right? Taking a break so that you can come back with a renewed sense of productivity. Here's the thing, rest is really powerful, right? So is having some time for rejuvenating leisure. So you may be done for the day, even if you haven't met your deadline, even if you haven't finished everything on your plan, if you've noticed that you're really in that, kind of downward spiral of diminishing returns. And often what I like to do at that point is just call it and say, I am better off going to bed and then even getting up a little earlier the next morning if there's something I really need to tune up before a deadline. Hey, if you like this podcast, then you are going to love what we've put together for Brilliant Balance Live. This 2-day event in Cincinnati, it's happening May 9th and 10th, 2019, is focused on helping you claim the power, productivity, and possibilities that will unleash your full potential. If you're ready to go beyond work-life balance to work-life brilliance, join me there. All the details are in show notes and tickets are going fast, so get yours today. I hope you'll join me for Brilliant Balance Live. It's just not always about gutting it out and working more hours. And I think a lot of us build those habits pretty young of, I'm just going to stay up later to get more done, particularly in college. Like, how many of you pulled all-nighters in college to study? It's that cramming factor. And I'll tell you, somehow my mom was so wise. Like, she knew this, probably knew that that was a very common phenomenon in college. And I remember being warned, like really sternly warned, never to do it. Don't pull an all-nighter and think it's going to help. And I never did. What really I had been taught was this process of learning to shut it down for the evening when diminishing returns had kicked in, go to sleep. And if you're studying, it really allows everything you've studied to move into long-term memory. So then when you wake up the next morning, you're fresh, you have all your mental faculties available to you, you're ready to focus, and all of that information that you've internalized is in long-term memory. Now as an adult, of course, I have less studying type demands, fewer times where I have to have that kind of recall. But what I need now is creative energy. And creative energy is refueled overnight as well. When we get enough sleep, the dots connect in our unconscious mind. And then when we wake up, you've had that experience, right? You wake up and you're like, oh, there's the idea I've been looking for. So this notion, this third question of have I hit diminishing returns is really pushing you to honor the power that good night of sleep can give you, right? You just may need to call it and pick it up again the next day. Now, if you are trying to adopt this, if you're new to this, idea and you're somebody who really just historically has worked all the time and now you're saying, I'm going to try this, I want to give you a few strategies that you can try if you're struggling early on, right? If this is not coming easily to you. The first thing I would suggest is that you commit to a bedtime and stick to it no matter what, okay? Now, in the early days, this will not always line up with the criteria that I shared earlier, right? It won't at first. You may actually find that you're uncomfortable, like I have to go to bed and things are not finished. But committing to the bedtime will start to shift your habits. It kind of puts a hard edge, right? A firm constraint on the end of the day. And if you know you're serious about it and it's not one that you're willing to compromise, then you will start to shift your habits in order to accommodate that bedtime. And that's a powerful shift, right? It's a declaration of a boundary. And if you commit to that bedtime and stick to it, you will start to change your habits in order to make that work. So that's the first thing you can try. Along with that, the second thing is I would recommend you build in at least an hour between the end of work, like air quotes, right? The end of work and the end of day. So, you may go into an office and be there from 8 to 5 or whatever and come home. And then you're in that next shift of, being a parent or being a spouse. And there's like work associated with that as well, right? There's household work and there's relationship work. What I'm suggesting is an hour between the end of all of those kinds of work and the end of the day. You may be somebody who picks up your computer and does a second shift at night, and you're catching up on some things that didn't get done during the day. However you're defining it, I want you to think about inserting a gap between when you finish all of that and when you actually go to sleep. And I think a lot of us are just running headlong into, we like hit a brick wall at the end of the day and we fall over and we're exhausted, but there really hasn't been an intentional break. So once you commit to a bedtime, you also want to back that up by about an hour and say, that's when, for all intents and purposes, I want to be done with work, right? Productive time. And so the third piece here, the third strategy is have something or someone to look forward to during that last hour of the evening. And if you think about it, if you know you're going to go to bed and you know you're going to have a gap between the end of work and bedtime, you want to make that time worth it. So it could be you're looking forward to a book that you are enjoying, right? It could be that you get to take a bath, or you get to have an evening yoga practice or snuggle time with the kids. It's the idea that you're going to have, maybe that's your opportunity for an uninterrupted conversation with your spouse. Whatever it is, make it something good so that you feel really drawn toward it. Okay. So these are beginner strategies. If you are new to this idea of wanting to know, how do I know when I've done enough for the day, right? How do I know when I can stop? Commit to a bedtime and then back it up by about an hour and then have something really good, right? During that hour that you're looking forward to. So the idea here today that we've been talking about is specifically for people who have a hard time knowing when to say when, right? When it comes to work. And you've just sort of allowed work to seep into all of your waking hours. And that, I will tell you, is a healthy percentage of working women. Because especially when you define work as not just like your day job, but when you look at work as all of the things that you're doing to, both for your job and also for your household, there is a lot of work sitting on your plate. And so many of us have entered this cycle of just waking up in the morning and spending all of our waking hours trying to be productive. And I get that. There's a healthy balance here of wanting you to sustain productivity and to be able to leverage your time to really make an impact. That's a good thing. It crosses over from being a good thing when it overshadows everything else. So we're trying to draw at this point just a 1 hour boundary of time that is not devoted to work. And of course, I've talked earlier in other episodes about how important it is to cycle periods of leisure and rejuvenation throughout the day or throughout the week. So, it's not only this last hour of the day. For me personally, the last hour of the day is not a particularly high energy hour. I would not put things in that hour that require me to be on my A game. So that last hour is more of a wind down, right? It's time that can be like luxurious, that's when my skincare routine might happen. That's when I might have a glass of wine if it's a Friday night. That last hour of the day is special. It's positive, but it's not like high energy. And so I want to make sure I've got some time throughout my week that's rejuvenating, but that I really have peak energy available to me. Okay. So there is a difference there that you want to pay attention to. All right. So let's recap a couple things. How do you know when you've done enough for the day? This is all predicated upon having a plan, deciding in advance, what am I going to get done in this day? And feeling confident that if every day's plan unfolds the way you designed it, you will in fact meet your deadlines. Okay. So then your 3 questions are, have you done what was on your plan? If you have, awesome, you're done for the day. This could be way earlier than an hour before bedtime, right? But just have you done what was on your plan? Second question is, have you met your deadlines? At a minimum, are you prepped for the next day? Right? And then the third is, even if you cannot answer yes to those first 2, have you hit diminishing returns? So if all 3 of those are true, I'm done with what's on my plan, I've met all my deadlines, and I've started to hit diminishing returns, it's like all systems are go, right? Green light across the board. But even one of them is enough to say like, I'm done for the day. Okay. And then we gave you a couple of ideas on how to get started if this is new territory for you. So first was commit to a bedtime and be pretty religious about it, right? And then build in that hour between the end of your productive work time and the end of day. So you hardwire in some leisure and relaxation, and then have something or someone to look forward to during that time. It'll make it so much easier if you're excited about how you're going to spend that time. Got it? All right. So we are not going to be Christopher Robin. That is our goal. Our goal is to stay connected to the power of the life that we have outside of our productive selves. And I think if you have not seen the movie, and it was a beautifully done movie, first of all, but I really think that when I was preparing for this episode, going back and thinking about the fact that I had to admit that was the character I could identify with the most was important, and I've had to really put these strategies that I've shared with you today in place over time to protect myself from that tendency. And I was sharing this with my 14-year-old daughter. I really think that people who love their work, especially, have a tendency to work a lot, right? When it makes sense, when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And so wanting to make sure that the other areas of my life are well served is something that takes constant effort, but it's so worth it, right? It's so worth it and important to really find all sides of the life that we're trying to build. So next time that we're together, we're going to talk about a feeling that most of us hate. And it might be a word that has come up for you if you tend toward working a lot, right? If you are somebody who works a lot, like we've been talking about today. And the word is being selfish, right? We have been cautioned against being selfish our whole lives. But I think there are times when being strategically selfish is really important. And we're going to dig into that next week. I know it's not exactly a popular thing to say, but bear with me through this one. I think you're going to learn something about what it means to be strategically selfish next week. Okay. Between now and then, will you do something for me? Will you tell me what you think of the podcast? And the easiest way to do that is post a quick review. I love reading these, you guys. It's super easy. It takes about 2 minutes to do, and they really mean the world to me. So especially if you're in iTunes, you just go in there, click on the episode and scroll downward, and you're going to come to a part where you see stars, and then you can choose how many stars to rate. It's like 1 through 5. And then there's a little button that you can say, leave a review, and you just type your review right in there. And then it gets submitted and posted, and you're done. And I love seeing what you all have to say when you write these reviews because especially sometimes they give us great ideas for future episodes. So would love it if you take a minute to do that. Also, come join me in the Brilliant Balance Facebook group. You just go into Facebook, go to groups and search the word Brilliant Balance, and we will welcome you in there. And lastly, follow us on Instagram. There's 2 different ways to do that. You can follow brilliant_balance, or you can follow me at Skolnicki. Slightly different lenses on those 2 Instagram sites. I look forward to seeing you in all of the places, and I will see you next week. Until then, my friends, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.